Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce this roundtable. So my name is Thiébaut. I'm working at Google Cloud in a team called Office of the CISO. And what I want to discuss with you today is open security. What do we mean by these terms, and why does it matter, really? So when I started working in cybersecurity 20 years ago, in a Prime Minister office that was to become ANSI a couple of years afterwards, my main job was to think as a safe manufacturer, to build protection shields for data and make sure that the data will not leak from them and that the bad actors will not be able to breach them, or at least not without a high cost of resources and efforts. We were heavily focused on confidentiality, quite concerned with integrity, but transparency, availability, interoperability were not major concerns and were probably out of our radar. But that was 20 years ago, and since then we have seen clearly a wide shift in digital usages. Well, first of all, the number have exploded of digital services, from travel booking to administrative procedure, from banking to manufacturing. There was a clear change of scale. Second, users, devices, data travel a lot. And when your users are not traveling, they are probably working from home. So that's the end of strict perimeters and clear boundaries. And third, and because we are using digital service and data for everything and from everywhere, we need them to be accessible at any time. So we, as cybersecurity folks, we understood what reliability is. Of course, this evolution was clear in the private sector, but also in the public sector. In France, in 2010, we had the first open data public policies, and 1 year later, the creation of État Lab, which can be seen more or less like the French state's CDO. We also had the regulation that followed this journey. One well-known example is the revised Directive for Payment Services, PSD2, with the requirement of opening account information to third parties that can include your competitors. So, if we talked about security for a long time, it has been synonymous of digging moats, building walls, thick doors, but we now have to adapt our vision and our way of doing cybersecurity. So to face the challenges I've just mentioned, we need to have a common understanding, we need to act transparently, and we also need to be receptive to new ideas and to allow technology to work together. In a word, we need openness. So at Google, we advocate this open security vision, even if at first sight it can be a little bit paradox, but I will try to explain to you that they are not conflicting, but rather converging. And we are based our approach upon 3 pillars. The first one is open standards, open source, and then open technology. So let's start with the open standards. Well, you're probably all very familiar with standardization. When we are working in IT technology, it's quite common. All our basic protocols were normalized to enable the worldwide interconnectedness. However, do not forget that it's not the case in every sector. Let's take a look at the railway sector, for instance. The European railway traffic management system was only designed in the 90s and implemented early 2000. And I'm not even speaking about the railway track gauge, which is still inconsistent across countries. And standardization is really a key element for security. Let's take an example. Today, around 95% of websites are using the SSL-TLS protocol. You know, the little lock you can see in your browser in the address bar that is rather green or gray. So 95% of the websites are using this protocol for traffic encryption and authentication. Of course, we can have here and there some discussion about configuration. it's definitely not the security silver bullet. But 10 years ago, maybe only 20 or 25% of these sites were using this security. So it was a huge improvement for our users' protection, and that was thanks to the fact that we shared a single standard. We are now confronted in cybersecurity with another challenge, is identity management. I don't know if you were present yesterday, but it was clearly stated in the panel about citizen-centric security. And it's probably one of the most complex and troublesome problems in cybersecurity. But it's fundamental to our data protection. And in all organizations, we are facing threats on these topics. We all know password leaks or phishing attacks. And we all still struggle to protect our users' identities. And as a security industry, we have tried several recipes. I'm sure all of you in this room have already been confronted at least a couple of times with an identity management system requiring a password at least 15 characters long with lowercase, uppercase, special character, digit, and that you have to change at least once every 3 months. Yes, I see some of you nodding, so you probably see what I mean. Well, at Google, we think that best practices and solutions should be shared, including in this topic. That's why we joined back in 2013 the FIDO Alliance to work on and to promote open authentication standards. And it's not only about theory, it's also about putting practical solutions in place, like the passkeys that can replace passwords, and that are now available to protect your Google account. It's essential that all together we develop and support standards for stronger and simpler way to authenticate our users. And please allow me to insist on the latter. Simplicity is all but anecdotic. If we want to onboard our users on our security journey, we really have to think about the usage. Now, what about open source? Open source software, you all know them, foundational to the modern internet, and they enable collaboration, rapid innovation by sharing solutions freely. But as it was clearly said yesterday in a roundtable, open source software does not mean secure software. When you are using open source software, you need to assess some risk. Of course, the most obvious one is the security of your code, but not only. You also have to think about maintainability. Will I be able to use my code, my open source solution, in 3 years' time? So you have to think globally about all your life cycle and your supply chain. However, despite this risk that has to be mitigated and assessed, open source provides transparency and make it possible to leverage the eyeballs of the community to make solutions safer, most robust, and more trustworthy. As a major internet actor, Google is committed to open source and to security of open source. And that can take several forms. So we are involved in several open source projects. We have released open source software. I'm thinking about Android for mobile devices. I'm thinking about Kubernetes for containers, about TensorFlow for machine learning. But it's not all about software. We also released our custom designed Titan encryption chip as an open source model. Or it can be some broader scientific concept like the transformer from a large model, the transformer architecture. And even if you are not an AI expert, you probably already have used this transformer architecture because transformer is the letter T of ChatGPT. And finally, because we are using for our own needs and in our own infrastructure a lot of open source solutions, we are evaluating and assessing the security of the code, and now we're leveraging these efforts for our customer to promote the use of the secure open source software. So that was the second pillar. Now let's consider open technology. So we've seen that open source is a good starting point for transparency and sharing secure code, but we have to go beyond. And the transparency and all the openness we talked about for software have also to be reflected in the entire stack of the infrastructure. When we are talking with our customer, we have from them very legitimate questions. What is done with my data? Where are my workloads executed? And we have to provide to them very clear answers. Say what we do what we say, and of course, afterwards, prove what we've said. And because security today means also resilience and independence, it's important that we provide and altogether supply interoperable solutions that can be put together, like different bricks, like a Lego kit, and put together a solution that comes from third parties, from our competitors, for your own solution that you developed internally, and to make all these bricks work together and work securely together. We are convinced that trying to retain a customer in a closed solution or in a siloed approach is definitely a dead end. You only stay in a place you know you can live easily. And building this ecosystem of innovation involves also the ability to be agile with new technology and to adopt new perspectives. And today, for everyone, but for CISOs in particular, the revolution is called artificial intelligence. And AI embraces the challenges we talked about, beginning with transparency. You have to understand how your model is running, and you have to trust your data that, on which your model is trained. And with AI, there are new questions that emerge, and mostly for CISO. How will the threat model evolve? How will the bad actors will use this technology? And then, as a security practitioner, how can AI help my day-to-day job? On this topic, we all have already use cases. At Google, we have developed some help for security analysts to detect some threats or reverse an artifact malware in order to understand what it's doing. But it's not only about technical help. It's also a way to reinvent the daily task of our security teams. In all organizations, we know the difficulties about hiring, training, and retaining security experts. So it's also part of your responsibility as CISO to enhance their experience, and maybe thanks to AI. And finally, CISO have to invent a way how to protect their own AI solutions. What are the specificities of AI security? How can I preserve my model? How can I secure my training data at scale? How can I enforce rules and boundaries for my user interaction? So I will stop talking about AI because we can have a discussion for a full day. For sure, there are still lots of uncertainties, but for me, there is one thing is certain, that is AI will not replace human intelligence. And my message for the CISO is ChatGPT will not take your job. And by the way, no will Bard. So as a conclusion, I will say that together, as a security community, we are living a challenging but exciting time. I hope that I've achieved to convince you, at least partially, about the benefits of open security and the way we can collectively gain from this principle. And I will leave you with this. Cybersecurity is a team sport. We need to work together, provider, customers, CISO, public and private sector, international organization, regulators, because no one is able to handle and to tackle all these issues alone. And globally, we have to embrace this posture. Open security is not about raising walls, but building bridges. Thank you very much for your attention.